Welcome to the Creativity Podcast, where art and engineering collide. In this episode, we discuss our personal creative endeavors ranging from woodworking to electronics, arts and life in general. My name is Max Maker, and this is my co-host, Jeremy S. Cook.
Hi everyone. Our guest this week is an amazing woodworker on YouTube that doesn't mind building 16 drawers for a single piece of furniture. His name is John Parilla from the YouTube channel Parilla Works. In this episode, we're going to talk about woodworking. What is it? Why do we like it? And how can you get into it? So John, what is woodworking to you?
Hey guys, thanks for having me. To me, woodworking is just a creative outlet where you can draw design and bring it to real life. And it's just, a fun hobby for me that turned into a profession.
So you say draw it. Do you use CAD usually, or do you hand draw it, or what's your preferred method?
What's your process?
Yeah, it usually depends on the scale or scope of the project. Most all the projects I do start with, pencil and paper. The project I'm working on right now just started with the back of a receipt and a highlighter, just drawing a rough sketch. If it's a really involved project, like some of the bigger ones I've done lately, I'll take it to SketchUp so that I can get some of the exact dimensions dialed in. But if it's a smaller project, I can just play it by ear as I go in the shop.
Very, very
so
nice.
You're using SketchUp. I know a lot of people are using that. Did you ever think about going to Fusion?
I did. I have Fusion on my laptop, but every time I open up those programs, I just get a little intimidated, and SketchUp is a little bit easier for me to understand. And for the projects that I'm doing right now, it's getting the job done. I know that I'll eventually have to switch over to Fusion because it's got a powerful program for using my CNC router, and I just need to hop over that for that aspect as well. But when I find the time to do it, I'll eventually get it done.
Yeah.
So John, what is your background? I mean, are you an engineer by background, or how did you come to this point?
Yeah, I studied materials engineering in college, so I got my bachelor's in that, and then I went to Virginia to work for a little bit as an engineer, and then I picked up woodworking, and I started with a couple Kickstarter projects, which is a crowdfunding campaign system. And from there, I was able to raise a little bit of money to start my own little shop.
Quite a lot, right? I looked it up earlier, and you made quite a lot of money for that Kickstarter.
Yeah, the first one I did was more of a hobby project, and I only sold like 20-something boxes, but I only had 20-something available because I knew I was still working, and I made all the boxes in my apartment. And when I moved back down to Florida, I ran another campaign, and I, let the floodgates open. I said, I'll sell as many as I can, make as many as I can. And I think in terms of woodworking projects on that website, it did pretty well. So it was a success.
Very neat. So what you say a box, was there something special about this box, or was it just I'm sure there was.
I started out with bandsaw boxes, and I used to see them online, and I thought they were pretty unique designs available compared to what you see with most technical cabinetry, which is mostly squares and rectangles. Bandsaw boxes allowed you to add a lot of unique curves to a project, and there's a low barrier to entry to create a bandsaw box. You essentially just need a bandsaw and some other tools on the side like a sander and stuff like that to clean it up, but essentially you only need a bandsaw. And so I had a couple designs in mind and got them made up and offered them on the Kickstarter, and people seemed to like them.
That's interesting.
And now you sell your stuff on Etsy too, right? Since Kickstarter is a one-time thing, kind of?
It was. I kind of wanted to get away from making all those little boxes. Once I was able to get the money raised to get a more solid shop, I wanted to move to more, I guess, technically advanced items and bigger items. With that money, I was able to get my table saw, a bigger bandsaw, some other tools like my CNC router. And, the Etsy shop, I have some of those boxes available, and I also have some other smaller items. And then there's always the option that most of the work I do, I get contacted through email to make like more one-off custom items.
Do you find it's tough to price yourself for one-off items? I've always had a hard time with stuff that I physically make. Has that been a challenge for you, or not?
It's really tough because most people, they see something in the store and then they know that I live near them, and they think, oh, it would be cool if he made it for me. And so they already have a price in mind, but they just want me to make it. And so I think the economies at scale are working against someone like me. And so it is difficult, because when you give them a price, you might in the beginning forget that you need these 2 extra router bits that you don't have yet, and another gallon of glue. And so these things sort of add up. After the project is done, you go back and look at how much money you spent and how much you earned, and things don't always add up as you hoped.
Sure, and you got to account for your time actually pricing the stuff and your mortgage and everything else.
I always have to account for the price of failure as well. If something goes wrong, if I have to give out a refund like a year later because I made a mistake, that's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to double the price basically.
Sure.
Especially with one-offs, you never know if what you're doing is actually going to be right at the end. A table could split, or the stuff that I do, something could not work out the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, I just finished up a large dining room table, and it ended up being about 10 feet by 4 feet in dimension. And so something that big, it really takes up a lot of space. And especially being there in the holiday season, you have to weigh your options. This project is going to take up half my shop. Like physically, it'll literally take up half of it. And so how do I work on other projects at the same time and manage my time correctly?
Sure. So how long have you been doing that for yourself, like full time?
I started last year. Well, I guess not last year. I started in early 2016 when I moved back down, and that's when I did the second Kickstarter. And from there, I was just taking on any work that I could find. I think in your head, you kind of see yourself as a creator, designer. I wouldn't stretch as far to an artist, but you kind of want to do the things you want to make. But when orders come in for a cutting board or something you've already made before, you kind of get maybe a little dejected, saying like, I'm too good to make those things. But at the same time, if it's going to earn you some money, it can't hurt.
That's interesting. So yeah, obviously you got a pretty successful YouTube page at this point too. Does that supplement some of that, or is that a money driver too, or is that
it
part
is
of the business?
Surprisingly enough, I wasn't sure if I wanted to start making videos, and every once in a while, if you get in a little bit of a slump as far as sales are concerned, you start to wonder, should I build up an inventory of items that someone might not ever buy, or should I make something kind of cool and unique? And so that's the route I took, and I filmed it. And, my first couple of videos, first handful, I guess, were nothing special. I was using a GoPro and just didn't put much effort into the editing. Once I switched to a better camera and I started putting a little bit more effort into the editing, I think it started to grow a little bit. And I think most channels, you have a couple of videos that kind of take off, and that builds your base. And so that's what happened with me. I have a couple of videos that did pretty well, and it brings in a subscriber base that you can kind of depend on from there on out. And so from now, you kind of have a base floor of what you can expect from each video, and then hopefully each one grows from there.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
So what kind of camera did you upgrade to? I use a GoPro myself, so maybe I need to step my game up a little bit.
Well, I have the GoPro, and my wife got it for me specifically for this type of thing. And it's just sort of limited as far as, it's got the fisheye lens, and I think you can remove that, but that's just another step for me. And so I have a Canon Rebel T3i, which I had before I started woodworking. I got it I thought I was going to try to get into photography, or at least just get some nice pictures for wall art. And I wasn't sure what its video capabilities were, but I gave it a shot, and it seems to be working out okay. There's every once in a while it'll stop recording because it can't take in as much data as it needs to, or maybe that's on the SD card. But, it's been doing pretty well. I think the only thing I'd like to upgrade is possibly getting an external microphone for it. But other than that, I like it.
Very cool. Yeah, I've got a Canon T2i and had that problem all the time with it stopping recording. And like you said, I think I just
that must be so annoying.
Oh, it's not fun at all. So I use my GoPro. It's a GoPro 5, which works pretty well for me. So
yeah.
Yeah. I was happy with my GoPro, but then it broke and I never got a new one. And now I kind of miss these shots. Sometimes they were really nice to have because they really give you a point of view. Like if you position it somewhere where your face is, it would look as if the person that views the video would think, oh, I'm standing there at the desk and doing something with my hands. You can't really do that with a normal camera.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, they're pretty pricey.
I think once I started using the regular Canon camera, I tried to incorporate the GoPro a little bit for, maybe some close-up CNC shots, but I didn't see much value in it, that I couldn't get from the regular camera. But, I still have it in my back pocket if I need it, so it's good to have.
Yeah. What I like to do with my GoPro is put it inside a drawer and then push the drawer in so it looks like you have an inside view from inside the drawer. Stuff like that where your normal camera just doesn't cut it because it's too narrow.
That's a cool idea. I've actually, the latest video I've been working on, I actually filmed everything in 4K, which I've been doing in 1080p before, and I've been cutting it down, which makes just for great zoom shots, I think. So maybe everybody knows that, but I just I just came upon it. I was like, oh, this is good technique. So I don't know. You probably do that, Max, right? You said you film everything 4K.
I always record 4K and I zoom in, but not that much. Maybe I zoom into like 2K, but not more than that. Because I think like if somebody's watching this on 4K, he might get disappointed if I zoom in too much.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, 1080p is pretty good still, I think. But
there's so many techniques that I have to remember when editing. Like there are these transitions that can be really nice sometimes. Transitions to black, transitions to white. This stop cut, or however it's called, like where you don't do a time lapse, you just show real-time footage, but you paste them really quickly after each other, so it looks almost like a time lapse, but it's not really. Like there's so much stuff I need to remember, and I never can when editing.
It's amazing. I look back at some of my old videos, and it's like some of them are so bad, and it's just like, but you see your progress, day after day after day, and or month by month, and it's pretty neat to see that. But at the same time, it's like, wow, I'm really ashamed of how bad these videos were 2 years ago. But I guess we all start from somewhere, right?
Yeah, constant improvement. Isn't that the Toyota thing?
Yeah, the TPS, the Toyota Production System, right? Or maybe
yeah. So that's why we don't have new resolutions, because we implement improvement every day.
It's funny. You've seen that movie Office Space, I assume, right? They have the TPS.
I haven't yet. No, I really have to.
They have the TPS reports, and that's like actually a real thing. It's Toyota Production System. And then I work for somewhere else that starts with a T, and they make bearings. I won't say exactly who they are, but you can take a guess. And they had their name, Production System.
They copied it. Yeah, I was like, of course.
So, anyway.
I had one staff review once, and he was like, so what do you want from this company? Like, have you got anything you want? I said, yeah, I want this thing. And he said, yeah, you can't have that. Anything else?
What do you mean? Like more money, or did you want like?
No. Well, it was just a technicality. It was something about my retirement plan, and they wouldn't do it. It would cost them a little bit more office work, but not any monetary cost. It would just mean somebody has to put in 10 more minutes to fill out some paperwork. And they're like, no, we're not doing that. If you ask for this, everybody will ask for this. That was the one thing I wanted from the company.
Well, I guess you weren't valuable enough for 10 minutes of their administrative time.
No, and then I quit.
Yeah, it's when I was separated from the company that started with T, I was like, oh, can I take my tools? And they're like, okay. I was like, all right, sweet. Thanks.
You really could?
Yeah, I think they felt bad for me or something, but so they let me take my tools.
Wow, that's really nice.
I don't think they knew how many tools I had, but
I got offered a toolbox, like a German manufactured toolbox with all the great German brands in there. And I was like, thanks, but that's just a waste. Like, I don't need it that often, because I need it like maybe once a week. I need an Allen wrench or something. And I passed on that. Should have taken it.
That's
But then I couldn't have taken that, I think. That would be too obvious. So John, when did you start to work on your own?
I think when I moved back down to South Florida in early 2016 is when I kind of was let loose to see what I could make of all this. And so
All right.
it's been a good time. I have to make sure to kind of keep my nose to the grindstone and keep working. I think you can kind of get a little distracted with little shop projects, but in the end, you got to make stuff that sells. So that can be a challenge.
Yeah, I totally feel you there. The worst part for me of work is writing invoices.
Oh, I don't mind. Like, give me some money. That's like that's what you get paid for, right?
No, it's this really boring paperwork and admin stuff, like keeping track. Has they paid yet? Have they not?
Well, I don't know if they have spreadsheets in Germany, but that's what I use here in America.
That's a good idea. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just filling them out is such a drag.
Yeah, I know. I don't really like it either, but most of my customers, I just do it once a month. I don't know. No. Now, I guess with you though, with a woodworking shop, you probably get paid beforehand, right? Is that I say?
Yeah, it
Beforehand.
depends. Some of the bigger projects I might do a half now, half later, or just kind of get the material costs up front. But it really depends. For the smaller stuff on Etsy, obviously I get, they pay and then I ship it out to them. But for the one-off stuff, it's a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
So where do you get your materials?
Well, that's a good question because I had a really good place down in Miami that was probably about 30 minutes away from me. And it was a big warehouse style that they sold to large cabinet companies and they sold wholesale. So I would walk in there, a little guy that would kind of waste their time buying, 100 board feet of something. But they were nice enough about it. And then all of a sudden they shut down. And so I was kind of scrambling for this last project to find some good material that I could use. And I found a place about 30 minutes north of me now, up in Delray, Florida. And it was pretty much the same situation. They sold wholesale, so I got pretty good prices. The only downside is they're not able to deliver. So I need to figure out a better solution because I don't have a pickup truck and I can't carry boards that are too long. So
That's interesting because Max, being German, he thinks that all Americans have pickup trucks. He told me.
Yeah, I was surprised that you said you don't have one.
Yeah.
I'd like to get one, but the car I have now works just fine. So I can't really justify getting rid of it.
Yeah. For one project, I had to get one board into the... my mom got an SUV, so I used that to transport like big plywood pieces. And the board just didn't fit by 5 centimeters. So I had to cut it down in 2 pieces and then stick it back together at home with dowels. And that just increased the work time on that project by another day.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah, it's a good question about asking where materials are, where I get them from, because that's another situation that can kind of deter your work schedule because, it's one thing to get all the wood ready, but if you don't remember to get a certain, tool or consumable like sandpaper and say it's not available locally, that could set you back a few days if you're lucky. Maybe you can get it on Amazon and get it, in 2 days or so. But if you have to wait from like a normal retailer that doesn't really have quick shipping, that could set you back a week.
Yeah. Have you ever been like late for projects because of that, or have you always been able to make them up somehow?
I think I've always done pretty well. There was I think a couple months ago, I was making engagement ring boxes. I was making one for somebody, I forgot where they're from, but I had run out of these little hinges that I used for them. And I think the ones that I did have on hand the tolerances were way too loose. I think it was an off-brand that I bought on accident. And so I don't have a Woodcraft or a Rockler nearby. So I was trying to find some local places that would have this kind of stuff, and I somehow found a little small shop and they happen to have 1 or 2 of the hinges available. So I think I drove 30 minutes out of the way to get it, but I was able to meet the deadline.
Was it Harbor Freight by any chance? I know Max is a big fan.
No, we do have a Harbor Freight nearby, but
How's yours?
It's okay. I've been there once or twice, I think, but I don't go there too often. I have a couple of their tools, but I'm just not super pleased with the results they give.
Yeah, we
It's a bit of a running gag in the show.
yeah, Max Max came to Florida to visit, and instead of going to the beach, he went to Harbor Freight to see what he could find, and I think he was a little disappointed.
And I fell in love with Wendy's.
Wendy's is good.
I really like Wendy's. And the staff in Burger King was so nice. Burger King in Cape Coral, nicest stuff I ever had in any fast food joint.
Sounds like you hit all the hot spots Florida has to offer.
Yes, that's true. With materials, I decided whenever I buy something now, I buy it in bulk. So if I buy screws, I buy 500 of them, like if they're machine screws. Because I know one day I'm going to finish them. If they're like reasonable size, not if they're super long and super narrow, but like anything like in 20 millimeter length, I just get 500. It costs a bit more, but then overall it's much cheaper, and I always have enough on hand. Same with sandpaper, like I buy 3 packs, and as soon as I'm down to 1 pack, I order more, and I order straight away in the workshop from my phone, so that way I don't forget it.
Oh, nice. Now, do you get that stuff from like Banggood or eBay, or do you get them from, where do you get all your screws?
All from Amazon.
Okay.
Everything Amazon. It's just so convenient. I think I could get it a bit cheaper if I got stuff from eBay, but it's one click buy. I don't have to think about it. I'll pay €1 extra maybe, but then I know I get it in 2 days' time.
Yeah, I mean, eBay is kind of exciting though. If you don't know when you need it, you're like, oh, I could use that in a month or so, and you order it, and then there's just like this nice surprise in the mail. It's like, oh, cool. I don't remember ordering this, but I can use the new amplifier or whatever it is.
I bought some aluminium solder, and it was supposed to melt at 280 degrees. And I was supposed to use this on my main project, which is the desk lamp I'm building right now. And I had to use it to fix something else before I got around to doing it on the desk lamp, which by this time was already machined and polished and everything. And I tried to solder, and it wouldn't even melt at 900 degrees. So it's not aluminium solder. I don't know what it is. It's like a coat hanger wire.
900, and that's Celsius too, I assume you're okay.
Oh yeah, Celsius. So like it was supposed to melt at 200, and even at 900 it wouldn't melt.
Wow.
So that was a big disappointment, yeah. But I'm so glad I didn't use this stuff, because it would have ruined my project.
Well, that's good.
Because I would have heated up the aluminium so much that it would have melted.
Well, I guess you can just use a TIG welder for that, right? Or what?
I used epoxy now, and
maybe it was welding wire. Maybe that's what they sent you.
Yeah, that's eBay,
Yeah, so you never know.
And it's funny, the guy I got it from, first he sent me a wrong parcel, and in there was like a cap for a 5-gallon jug, like a tap, like to pour water from.
Really?
So he sells both welding rods and water jug taps. So John, what tools do you have in your possession that really spark joy for you?
That's a good question. Yeah, I recently got a track saw, and I've used it a couple times, and I don't think I'm going to use it too often, but I think when I do use it, it's going to be really clutch. It's one of those tools that you could probably get by without if you just have a regular circular saw and create your own little track. But the tolerances on the one I got, which is I'm really happy with. I have a regular circular saw, and I've used the guide, but there's always a little bit of a mess up if you're not careful with your cut. And I recently got my bandsaw tuned up. I bought a brand new Rikon almost 2 years ago, and for some reason I never took the time to get it in perfect working order. And when I started working with it, I wasn't getting that great of results, and I just didn't feel like messing with it. And that's why in a lot of my videos you'll see me resawing on the table saw, and I get a lot of questions about why I do that. And I usually tell people it's just because it's faster, and I don't have to worry about how much material it's taken away, because I have material to spare. But the main reason was because A, I didn't want to drag the dust collection over to my bandsaw, and B, it wasn't working well. So I took some time, a project or two ago, to get it fixed up, and what ended up happening was the drive belt on the drive pulley was off by 2 of the ribs. There's like 5 V's on it, and 2 of them had slipped off. And it was just something I had never noticed, and I also took the time to tension it correctly, so now it's working great. So for anyone that is wondering why I do that, you'll see me resawing on the bandsaw more often now.
Did you balance the wheels too?
The wheels are fine. They track nicely.
I had exactly the same with my bandsaw. I used it for 2 years, and I thought it was really crap, even though it was expensive. And then I tuned it and squared everything up, and now it works perfectly fine. And a fresh saw blade, of course.
I've got a cheap one, and I expect it not to work very well. So but maybe it is time to just tune it up and everything. I had this expectations like you guys did at first apparently, and what do you know? If you set it up correctly, it works a lot better.
It's really good fun.
Well,
tuning it up.
The first tool I ever bought was a little wood lathe, but the second one I got was a 10-inch Craftsman bandsaw, and that's the tool I used to make, I think, about 200 or so bandsaw boxes. Everything from my Kickstarter I made on this little Craftsman bandsaw, and I tell you, it's a little workhorse. And a lot of people trash benchtop tools, or just say it'll tell you to save your money to buy the better model, but I still have it because I keep it a thinner blade on it for more scroll work. So it's a nice little tool.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be an expensive tool for one to love it, Some stuff is really simple, and it's just every time you take it in your hands, you're like, oh, I love this.
Yeah, I think the one tool that I have my eyes on down the road that I'd like to get is a drum sander. I think it's one of those things that would put a nice finish on every project you do. Because sometimes you might have some bad results with your planer if you have snipe or a little bit of tear out, but the drum sander can get rid of that stuff. And I've been wanting to get one, and they're a little too expensive to just buy, just randomly get one for yourself. But it's funny because I'll go spend $50 here, $100 here on something else, and then at the end of the month, I'm like, wow, I could have just got a drum sander if I didn't buy all that little stuff. So I keep my eye.
Is building one an option?
No, I'm not even interested in building my own jigs, to be honest. But so I don't think I'll ever build a tool like that. Although I do enjoy some of the videos that some of the guys have out there making their own tools. But I did study engineering, but it's just not in my mind to make those types of things. I feel like it's easier or more fun for me to make actual projects.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. We interviewed another Florida guy, guys from Florida, Physics Anonymous. They they were telling us
Mike and Ryan.
Yeah, they were telling us how they really like actually building the tools. And personally, for the most part, I like buying the tools so I can make neat stuff. But I guess it's all about what you like. I mean, I think it's an interesting pursuit. It's just like you, it's like, well, I want to make this other thing that's pretty cool, so I might as well just skip that step.
Because so far their channel only exists out of their lathe rebuild project, so...
Yeah, I don't even use a shop-built crosscut sled, and that's one of the most common and easy jigs to build. And you'll find a ton of videos on YouTube showing you how to do it, but there's a lot of precision involved that I don't like to deal with, and if there is a small error, I'd like to know that I can call a company to have it fixed as opposed to like trying to fix it myself. I think it might sound a little like I'm a prima donna or something, but I feel like I have other things I want to build than the jigs that makes other stuff.
Well, this is your business. You have to make money with this,
right?
You have to spend money to make money.
Sure. Yeah, that's always the debate. It's like, do I spend money on this, or do I make it, or do I, because at some point, sure, if I had a $500,000 CNC machine, I could make some really cool stuff with it. But in the meantime, how am I going to pay my mortgage or get financing for that matter?
Right. Oh, I was going to say, I have a couple jigs, and I get questions about them, whether I like it or not. And it's interesting because I feel like if you are just starting out, you probably should build your own jigs. But like you said, if you have more of a cutthroat deadline to work with, it might not be as high up on your to-do list.
Yeah, and there's something about metal that's just much nicer than wood, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Sure.
Who has a nice crosscut sled is Nick Ferry made a really nice one that if I were to ever make a crosscut sled, or any jig for that matter, I think coming from his channel, I think I would probably copy the one he made. It has a lot of nice hardware, and it's a really clean build. So if anyone is out there wondering what kind of crosscut sled to make, I would look at Nick Ferry's channel.
So John, how big is your shop? Do you have any limits as far as for what you can have in it? Obviously, you do. We all do.
Yeah, it's just a normal 2-car garage. So I think it's something like 18 by 18. And I think everyone hopes to have a bigger shop than they currently have. And I'm no exception. So there's different things I'd like to have that I can slowly feel the shop filling up. And I'm kind of having to make compromises that not everything can have its own spot. Sometimes I have to keep stuff stowed away and then bring it out when I need to use it, then put it back away. But, as far as a dedicated shop, I think that's something that I would like to do in the future if I could justify it cost-wise. But at the same time, it is nice to be home and working at the same time. So from that perspective, it's nice.
Yeah, I agree with that. You can have your dog around, right? So.
Yeah, she's a handful.
I'm sure. Yeah, I've got one too. I love her to death. So.
And 2 kids.
And 2 kids, and I love them to death too. So, although, sometimes they'll interrupt me, but it's nice. Obviously, it's good. Can't complain. So.
Yeah, and as far as shop space, I think when I was first buying some tools, when I had a little bit of money from my Kickstarter, I was thinking, let me just buy the biggest and the best and get it over with. And so I bought my saw stop, and I bought it with the 52-inch fence, and I figured, why wouldn't I want the biggest fence? It's the biggest, it's the best, so I should have it. But I have never had to cut anything over 40 inches using the fence. And so at this point, that extra table and fence length just takes up space, and it ends up being a space for clutter that I just put stuff on. And the same goes for my CNC machine. I bought a Shapeoko XXL, and it takes up a lot of space. It takes up like a 4 foot by 4 foot footprint in the shop that you can't really store anything above it, and it's just sort of there. And it just sort of juts out in the corner. So I think if I had to do this all over again, I'd probably rethink some of the sizes of the tools I was getting.
What's the actual workspace on work area on that?
I think it's something like 30 by 30, or maybe it's a square meter. It's something like that.
Okay, that's pretty good. I've got a 2x3, but that's always taken up by tools and stuff. So really, you're talking about more like 1.5 by 2 or so. When technically it is a 2x3, but then, you know what I'm talking about. Same thing with Max.
Right.
I think Max has a similar size CNC.
Yeah, my CNC was too big. I built it 2 by 1.5 meters. So like.
Oh, wow.
It's a lot. It's in feet. It's like as tall as a person. It's long, and it was just too big for the workshop. So I cut it in half after 2 years, because I just thought this space, I need the space for better stuff. I needed to move around. And then I thought about, I built a little thing to put it up against the wall, so it would be at an angle, so it takes up less space, but then that would, it just wasn't stable enough to cut anything on it, because the vibrations would shake it too much. So I got rid of that idea, and I cut it in half. But yeah, safe spacing CNC would be really nice.
What did you plan on making when you were building that CNC that big?
A table. Not a table. A leather seat, like a lounge chair.
Oh, that sounds nice.
Yeah. So it's lounge chair dimensions from the side view.
I see.
Very cool. Yeah, I love my CNC router, but it's always like, just need something just a little bit bigger. It's not, and then you need it smaller too when you want to work around it. So, what are you gonna do?
Well, the project I'm working on right now, it's involves a little bit of CNC work, and I had to cut out a template for it, and the template is 20 inches high and 42 inches wide, so I had to cut it in half. And I'm going to have to glue the 2 pieces together. So it's sort of reaching the limitations of the machine, but I have a workaround for it, so it's not too big of a deal.
Okay. Before this one, I actually had a 7x12 CNC router, which people thought was huge until I told them that was inches, which is actually true. But, it was nice for cutting out little stuff, just, obviously,
jewelry.
Yeah. No, I mean, exactly that skill type stuff.
I always see people that want to build huge 3D printers. Like, oh, I want to do 40 by 40 centimeters, which is like a foot by a foot. And it's like, do you know how long pieces are going to print on that in that size?
Yeah, it'll take you like three or 4 days to print something.
Yeah, you wouldn't print a shoebox.
Yeah, people, especially, several years ago when these first started coming out, it seems like people were like, oh, 3D printers will just change everything. By 2018, people would be just printing their shoes and whatever else, just
shoes.
And it's a great technology in some respects, but you can't say it's going to replace everything. I mean, maybe in 50 years or maybe in 20, but it's still got a long way to go before it's, going to replace your milling machine or lathe or whatever else. But it's excellent for what it's great at, but it's just not. I think people have this expectation that you could just make everything in your closet, and just.
Yeah, I think it's great for prototyping if that's what you're into. But I think people have this idea that if a part on something you own breaks, that you would just go print it out, which I think we could probably get there one day. Like, say the back of your TV remote broke off and you have to get a new one. Maybe the manufacturer could supply the code to print it out. But I don't know if we'll get there anytime soon.
Yeah, at the moment I couldn't even print that part on my remote because it's got sharp corners and all of that.
Right, and you're not even probably printing out of material that would be suitable for that type of application. At least, I'm not too familiar with 3D printers, but I'm not sure what they usually print out of. I usually hear like PLA, maybe, I guess.
PLA, yeah. Or ABS, which is like the Lego brick material. ABS is really good. PLA is good too, but not as strong as ABS.
I will say though, when I worked in manufacturing, they just got to the point where they had a pretty good 3D printer at the place I worked, and they'd make like machine guarding out of it sometimes, and just in some really unusual stuff, and it actually worked out pretty well for that type of application. Applications where it's not just getting banged over and over 100 times a day.
I've seen a guy today on YouTube. His name is Peacemaker. He does machining work. Like industrial machining work, and in his giant CNC he built this fixture with a 3D printer where the collet of the CNC would go into this fixture, then turn leftwise to unscrew the collet, then insert a new workpiece, and then go the other way again to fix the collet again, so the CNC could open and close its own collet with the 3D printed part, which I thought was absolutely amazing.
Oh, yeah, it's amazing.
So you automated
what
it.
You can get up to, like the not necessarily 3D printed, but what do they call them? Pallet or machine tending robots? Where you have something that's being machined, and then a 6-axis robot goes in and takes it out and puts the next one in. So no human to even do that part. So that's as an engineer, I think that's awesome.
That's exactly what this guy does. Peacemaker is his name on YouTube. Really good channel. Yeah, one question we have for you. How do you get these really fine details, fine edges, 90-degree angles?
Well, it doesn't come easily, and sometimes it won't happen at all. I think there's many projects where perfection is far away from what you'll achieve, and you have to be okay with that. I think a lot of times you can't let perfect be the enemy of good. So it's something I like to sort of live by. Not that you want to make stuff that's incomplete or poorly crafted, but wood is the type of material that isn't as forgiving as other materials. It's imperfect. So, one piece of wood will have a crazy grain. The other piece will have a nice straight grain that works nicely with your tools. So I'm working on a project right now with a bunch of pieces of walnut, and I have a bunch of pieces that are all cut to the same dimension. I pick up one and it's super heavy and dense. I pick up the next one and it's really light. And so that's the type of thing you have to kind of get used to when you're working with wood. As far as your tools, that's just something that's whatever you're comfortable with. I think the YouTube channel Garage Woodworks, he does a lot of work with the dial indicator to get his tools absolutely perfect. And that's just something that I think is good for his work. At the same time, he's probably also just interested in using that type of tooling to get his tools dialed in. I'll get it to where it's good enough. If I notice a mistake, I'll try to fix it as best I can. And that's sort of what I'll settle with.
Sure. And I think as a creator too, if I don't know about you, Max, and you, John, but it's like you make something and the imperfections just pop out at you so much. And I don't think necessarily everybody sees that. You guys, what do you guys think? I guess you have to know when to compromise and be like, well, not everybody's going to notice that little nick at the bottom of the workpiece or whatever.
Yeah, if you post it on YouTube, someone will see it.
If you get enough views. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So congratulations. That's excellent. You're at that level.
Yeah, I think any mistakes you make on a project, they're there, and most people will not see them, or they'll just think it's part of the project that's there for some reason or not. But I had that issue when I first started working with wood, and I would try to be a perfectionist and I'd try to fix everything, but the more you try to fix something, if you try to sand something away, you're just going to sort of exacerbate the issue and make it pop out even more. So that's also one of the reasons I don't like to work with veneered plywood, like a walnut veneered plywood or expensive plywood like that it is so easy to nick the veneer. Yeah. And then now you see, the plywood underneath, and it's just something I don't want to deal with. So that apothecary chest I made last month, I wanted to use solid wood, and that's one of the main reasons is, I could have used Sapwood veneered plywood, and it would have been a lot cheaper and a lot quicker to make. But, as many times as I had to move that case, I know I would have 100% nicked the veneer at least one time. So having to repair that would have been a tough task.
I had that problem. We have this plywood here, which is really cheap, but it has a really nice cherry finish on the outside. I don't know how they do it, or if it's even is cherry, but it looks absolutely nice, like cherry. And if you sand through it, it's whisper thin. Then underneath you see red glue. And I tried all kind of magic markers to fix that, but you always see it.
Yeah, well, I guess you got to know when to fix it and when to leave it alone, I guess.
Yeah, and there's certain projects that demand more perfection than others. When you're making small items, you really have to be careful with how you're working, because the smaller the item you're making, the easier it is to see these mistakes. So some of the ring boxes I make, you can, if you have a little bit of tear out from planing in the wrong direction, that's going to be easily seen when the item's only 3 inches tall, because there's not much else to look at besides the mistake. But on the other side of the coin, when you're working with a big project, it might be easier to hide a mistake, but if you do make a mistake early on, it'll start compounding as you put stuff together. So, I think, I guess no matter what size project you're working with, you got to be careful with your mistakes.
Sure. And I guess with the ring box too, you don't want, them to ask a girl to marry him and say, well, I'd think about it, but that ring box just not quite good enough. So
yeah.
I'm sure John will offer a refund in that
case. This box had some tear out on it. Can I please get a new one?
a new girlfriend?
Or maybe somebody asked for something especially cheap, and you can offer those.
Well, that's
ones.
another thing, is because I think a lot of woodworkers don't like sapwood, or some people don't like the look of it in certain cases. And that's another thing, is I think a normal person that doesn't know much about woodworking might appreciate that type of thing. So if you were to include sapwood into a project, excuse me, if you were to include sapwood into a project for a woodworker to buy, they would probably be upset about it if it doesn't look nice. But I think someone else, if they're just buying something from your shop and you include sapwood, they would probably be pretty excited about it and think it's unique.
How do you define sapwood, just so in case I or anybody else doesn't understand that?
Well, so sapwood is, if you were to look at a tree and cut it, it would be the outside part of the tree closest to the bark. It's usually a lighter color. So on walnut, the heartwood would be like a dark brown, and the sapwood would be maybe an off-white or a dark tan, depending on how the wood was dried.
Very good. Thanks for explaining that to to Max, I guess. Since
yeah, thank you.
No problem.
I Googled it in the meantime, to be honest. So, John, let's go to progress. What have you done this week, actually?
This week I started a new project, and it's a little pet project for myself, and I don't get to do this too often. Last year I made a Malus-style chair, and that was my project for the year that was for myself. And so this year I'm starting off with a little bench that is sort of in the style of a box jointed bench that you might see popping up on YouTube every now and again. And most people will make them out of 2x4s, and it's a pretty simple and cheap project. And so I'm trying to take it to the next level, and it's going to be similar in construction, but it's going to look like a bunch of squiggly lines. So it's not a type of bench you would ever want to sit on. Not that any bench that I've ever made gets sat on. So it's usually just, let me put my feet up here and tie my shoes. So I figured if it's not comfortable to sit on, it's not a big deal. So that was the project I squiggled down on a receipt. I just drew the design quickly, and that was kind of what popped in my head. But besides that, I kind of took the new year as the time to kind of clean the shop up. That's what I did last year, and it worked out well. I got a new shop layout. I kind of rearranged things, cleaned up, and kind of get a new fresh start. And, over the year I acquired some new tools, so I think a new shop layout was definitely due.
Very, very nice.
That's always nice, yeah. Do you put your stuff on wheels, on casters?
Most of the stuff is on wheels. So the table saw, the bandsaw, and my outfeed table are on wheels. And so those are easy enough to move. The workbench that I have is not on wheels, but I can kind of drag it around easy enough. So, but some of the other tools, like my joiner, it does need a mobile base. It doesn't have one right now, and that's a pretty big pain to move. So I got it in its spot now, so hopefully it won't have to be moved for a while.
Very, very cool. What about you, Max? You working anything cool this week?
Yes, definitely. My desk lamp, which is, I always wanted a desk lamp, which is a nice desk lamp, but I couldn't find one. Even the designer brands for like $500-600, I didn't like them, and so I built my own. Lots of CNC work on that, and yeah, pretty much all CNC and on the lathe. It's really minimalistic. It has a carbon fiber stem to it, and it's super bright. It's got a 30-watt LED, so there's like 240 watts of the incandescent. It's really bright, and yeah, I almost finished it, and the video should be up hopefully soon. I guess one more week, I guess.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I can't wait to see it. I've been hearing about it for weeks, it seems like, or maybe longer.
Yeah, I know. I had some other stuff that occupied me, and some access problems to the lathe, but it's all fixed now, and yeah, really proud of. Not proud. I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah, and you, Jeremy?
Yeah, I guess the biggest thing I did this week, my wife got me a Nixie tube clock kit, which
wow.
I don't know if you guys are familiar with what those are, but they use a. Yeah,
those are cool.
Can you describe it to the viewers?
It's like they're these little modules, and it's almost hard to describe, but it's basically got 10. I guess it's cathodes or anodes. Anyway, 10 individual things that glow, and they're stacked one against each other. So as one, when it goes from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3, it actually counts back in the glowing pieces of metal. And they're these just modules that display the numbers. So you've got 4 of them together, and this clock, it was sold as a kit, and I put it together and actually did a video of it too, which is kind of not something I usually do as far as kits and stuff, but I think this one will be really cool because you had to actually solder the whole thing on. Took me several hours, so that's it's pretty fun. And then I guess the other thing, I made that bed for my son, so I'll be putting that'll be the next video I put out, so I'll be happy to show that off. Probably not up to John's standards, but it's sturdy enough to keep him to keep him from falling on the floor, so that's a good thing.
Well, John made amazing work. This chest of drawers he did with these lots of apothecary. How do you say it?
Apothecary?
That's the thing. It looked so great, and he had so many drawers in that.
Yeah, that looked really, really good.
Yeah, that
beyond.
Thank you. That was a fun project that it came about because I had made a smaller one that had was meant to hold watches. And then my wife wanted one for the entryway of our house. And so she just drew up a quick little design. Pretty much what you see in the video is what she kind of drew up. And I made it happen. And that was a very involved build. Having 21 drawers. Every little task took a long time because you had to do it 21 times. So
that's great though, to put it in front of your house. So now, like when people walk in, you know whether they're nosy or not, because obviously these people want to look in these drawers, right? So you know if they're gonna snoop around, right? It's like a test.
Yeah. Most of them are empty still, but I think if you give us enough time, they'll be filled with junk soon enough.
Yeah.
So, John, last thing we want to ask, if somebody wants to get involved in woodworking, how would one do that? It looks like you've come to pretty good point, but certainly you started from somewhere, right?
Yeah, I think the first thing you should do is figure out something that you want to make. And then from there, you can take the path of seeing what tools and materials and plans you might need. I think a lot of people will get into it and get obsessed with the tools. So they'll say, I need these 5 tools before I can do anything. And not until I get my workbench set up and my shop set up can I make anything. And it becomes an obsession about just being a part of the hobby instead of actually making something. So I think if you, for instance, want to make a bed, find some plans online to make a bed, see what tools those plans call for, and just get going. I think it's really easy to get frozen saying like, I'm not ready to do this yet, but I think you have to accept that a ton of mistakes are going to happen before you're going to get good at it. And even when you are good at it, you're still going to make a bunch of mistakes. So I would say just find something you want to make and then kind of see what tools you need and get started.
Very cool. Yeah, I think that's a great philosophy just for woodworking, YouTube videos, metalworking, and whatever. Just kind of plays into what we're all about, I think.
Yeah.
There's a lot of resources online. I think, even outside of YouTube and things like that, there are a lot of books you can get. I have a lot of woodworking books that obviously I've never read any of them, but I have them. And if I need to read them, I can. And so the drawer joint that I use for my apothecary chest drawers is called a half-blind lock joint, and it has a couple other names. But I found that in a book that I got from Goodwill, which is a thrift store, and they're pretty cheap. So if you're ever in those kind of stores, see what kind of books they have. Those types of books have very traditional and classical designs, and they have a lot of techniques and approaches that are pretty timeless that haven't changed. So that's another avenue you can take.
Very cool. It's very interesting. So I guess the last thing after that, I mean, Max, well, first of all, John, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you or see your stuff, how would they contact you? Or better yet, why don't we talk about your Etsy store? They can buy your stuff too, right?
Yeah, I have a couple things listed, and most of them are some of my bandsaw box designs and a couple of my engagement ring box designs. And if you want something a little bit more custom, you could always just email me. I think some of the contact information is on my website, which is perillaworks.com. And if you wanted to see more of my day-to-day stuff, you could follow me on Instagram at perillaworks. And I usually try to post at least once a day showing what I'm working on that day and give a little couple sneak peeks at what videos are to come.
And your YouTube is Parilla Works as well? Is that correct? Very cool.
Yep.
What about you, Max? Where do we find you?
I think the best thing is just going on YouTube, typing in Max Maker, and you find my channel with the big green logo. And I've got all the links in the channel and description of all my videos, so you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, or check out my Amazon store with some nice tools if you want something nice.
Oh, very nice, yeah. And
you?
Oh, as for me, you can find me on YouTube. I'm Jeremy S. Cook, and on Twitter at Jeremy S. Cook as well. It's pretty much the only social media outlets I engage in. So that's where you find me. Yeah. It's been great talking to you, John, and you, Max, as always.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining us, and we hope we have you back sometime.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
When you've got 200,000.
Stay warm in South Florida. I know it's been a rough winter.
I'm doing my best. I'm running out of long sleeves.
Yeah, I know. I had to put on a light jacket today, so it was kind of tough.
Oh no! Oh, that's too bad. All right. Bye bye.
See ya.